January 19, 2024. Good day all. This is a message from Sierra Victor. We continue with psychological operations tactics, techniques, and procedures as from FM 3-05.301 of the United States Army, written in 2003 as backbone, but we supplement our program with other sources as we continue. Appendix A, PSYOPS and the Targeting Process, Part 2. Targets are identified in two basic categories: fixed and mobile targets. For fixed targets, which include non-mobile man-made structures and facilities, targets are assigned a basic entry number unique to each specific target, which is maintained in a database by the Defense Intelligence Agency. For mobile targets, which include movable equipment and military units, Joint Task Forces and Unified Commands establish their internal target folder identification system. During the target development process, both categories of targets are then prioritized against commander's guidance and objectives, and vetted against legal, political, and operational constraints, for example, no-fire areas, restrictive fire areas, and fire support coordination lines. In the next phase, assets are weaponized to ensure the appropriate action is used to achieve the desired effect. For a PSYOPS non-lethal target, this process includes planning for the use of leaflet bombs, vice box drop from fixed or rotary wing aircraft, or engaging with radio broadcasts. Chapter 3. Intelligence Preparation of the Battle Space, IPB for short. It is your attitude, and the suspicion that you are maturing the boldest designs against him, that imposes on your enemy. Frederick the Great Instruction to his Generals, 1747. The IPB process supports commanders and their staffs in the decision-making process. The IPB is the commander's and each staff member's responsibility. IPB is conducted prior to and during the command's initial planning for the operation, but is also performed during the conduct of the operation. Initial IPB for PSYOPS, done during planning, deals with more traditional order of battle, weather, and terrain factors. The PSYOPS-specific initial IPB concerns itself with broad target sets, demographic information, and broad cultural practices. The PSYOPS IPB is probably the most extensive and detailed of any IPB conducted in the Army. In addition to merely identifying various hostile or friendly elements, the PSYOPS IPB contains comprehensive and in-depth analyses of numerous target audiences and their conditions, vulnerabilities, accessibility, and susceptibility. IPB identifies facts and assumptions about the battlefield environment and the threat. The four-step PSYOPS intelligence preparation of the battle space process. Step 1. Define the battlefield environment. Identifies characteristics of the battlefield that will influence friendly and threat operations. Establishes the limits of the area of interest. Identifies gaps in current intelligence holdings. Identifies characteristics of the battlefield that require in-depth evaluation of their effects on friendly and threat operations, such as terrain, weather, logistical infrastructure, and demographics. Identifies gaps in the command's knowledge of the threat and the current threat situation. Step 2. Describe the battlefield's effects. Evaluates the effects of the environment with which both sides must contend. Identifies the limitations and opportunities the environment offers on the potential operations of friendly and threat forces. Characteristics of geography include general characteristics of the terrain and weather, as well as such factors as politics, civilian press, local population, and demographics. Analyze the weather and terrain and determine how these will affect the dissemination of PSYOPS products by both friendly and hostile forces. Infrastructure analysis for PSYOPS considers the information environment and the media outlets that disseminate information. This analysis must determine which outlets are available for use by friendly PSYOPS forces and those that are being used by opponent forces. Determine the vulnerabilities, lines of persuasion, susceptibilities, accessibilities, and effectiveness of each target audience. This process also determines each target audience's ability to affect the battlefield. Determine the ability of each TA to influence the PSYOPS. Step 3. Evaluate the threat. Analyze the command's intelligence holdings to determine how the threat normally organizes for combat and conducts operations under similar circumstances. PSYOPS specialists concern themselves with propaganda analysis and counter-propaganda during this stage of IPB. They monitor the competing agencies within the area of responsibility who are disseminating information and determine what effect that information will have on the conduct of the operation. Step 4. Determine threat courses of action. Integrates the results of the previous steps into a meaningful conclusion. Given what the threat normally prefers to do and the effects of the specific environment in which he is operating now, what are his likely objectives and the course of actions available to him? This information taken together allows the PSYOP force to modify behavior and counter other information to achieve PSYOP. PSYOP Intelligence Collection Plan. The IPB is a four-step process in which the 14 political military factors are used as a guide for categorizing intelligence and delegating duties and functions. Intelligence needs focus on leveraging the social, economic, political, and psychological conditions within a targeted audience. The political military process is basically an analytical framework representing a multidisciplinary approach to understanding the factors that provide the basis for most all of PSYOP relevant analyses. Once fully explored, these factors affect the conduct of PSYOP and its outcome. This framework helps the SIO, Senior Intelligence Officer, and the commander develop the information required to complete the mission. The commander and his SIO use a multidisciplinary approach because no single factor is sufficient to understand the psychological dimension of a mission. Thank you for listening or reading this message. In our next message we will continue with 14-factor political military analytical framework. Please feel free to use and distribute as needed. Our messages are not by any means enticing you to a revolution of sorts, but rather to equip you with the necessary theoretical background in order to assist local armed forces or police in stabilizing a SHTF situation. Please contact any admin on any Sierra Victor group for our previous material or search for our channel on YouTube. We wish you well. Sierra Victor.